In the last section, we spoke about an additional avenue used by Node.js to get code executed. So some function calls in the standard library are delegated to the underlying operating system and ran entirely outside the event loop. Now I again imagine that you have some follow-up questions about this process. So let's look at two possible questions that you might immediately have. All right, here we go. So two possible questions that you might be thinking about right now. So the first one, you might be curious what functions in the Node standard library use the operating system's async features. So this is a very similar answer to the one that we had previously for that thread pool. A lot of this stuff is very specific to the operating system that you're running on. And you can't really depend upon one function always being executed through the operating system on one computer or a different way on the other one. In other words, don't try to detect or plan around the stuff ahead of time. Now, almost everything inside the networking library, like say making requests or receiving requests or setting up a listener on some port, almost all that stuff is handled by the operating system, regardless of what operating system you're using. So that's the one solid answer I can give you. Now, the second question might be, okay, hey, we now know about this async stuff tied to the operating system, but where does that fit into all the event loop stuff that we were talking about earlier? So as you might imagine, that stuff is all related to that pending OS tasks array that we had created back inside of our pseudocode file. So here's our loop file over here. Inside of here, we had that pending OS tasks array. So we can kind of imagine that when Node runs, it creates some type of data structure that represents all the pending requests or networking or whatever else tied to the underlying operating system. As long as there's still some active request or some active operation inside that array, Node is going to continue running. And it's going to always return truthy on this should continue function right here, which means we're going to continue iterations through our event loop. And then as soon as all those underlying operating system calls are complete, well, now the event loop has nothing else to do, and we exit back over to our terminal. So that's why when you start up a server and say app.listen on port 3000 or whatever, that's exactly why your application continues running in the terminal and does not immediately exit back to the command line. Okay, so we've now spoken about the event loop quite a bit. Let's summarize some of the main things to know about it inside the next video. So quick break and we'll do a review in just a moment.